All right, Ryan, what's good in business right now?
A little bit of everything, you know. It's been a good year for us. A couple businesses that we have. I'm excited to talk about it. Agency stuff. I do some training stuff, very similar to digital marketer, actually. Specifically for SEO agencies. Whole bunch of stuff. Heard you talking about content. Content is
Yes.
a key part of everything that we do. Paid traffic, organic stuff, social, everything. Do a lot of video stuff. Been really pushing that stuff a lot. A lot of TikTok stuff. Been pushing all that stuff a lot too. Really trying to build a moat around a new platform there where everyone thinks it's for kids dancing. I'm trying to establish myself there ahead of time, spending a lot of money there on ads too as well.
Oh, you
So
should.
yeah, whole bunch of stuff
That's
that we're
very
going to talk
smart.
about today. Yeah.
Well, actually, what's funny is I used to generate these content reports for companies prior to starting a digital marketer, and I researched several competitors for digital marketer, and I went back in and kind of plugged them in, and they have all started TikTok channels since I ran that report 2 years ago. And
Yeah.
so I think it just proves that even the big guys, and it's kind of ridiculous. Some of the big guys still don't have TikTok, but a lot of the smart ones are like, yeah, get
Well,
on
there's
board.
there's a lot of barriers to entry around it, and I think there's a lot of really good discussion in the marketing community now about my background is in SEO. I've been doing this for almost 15 years now. I got started in SEO, and SEOs are an amazing community, very vibrant, very active, very passionate, very vocal, but also very stubborn and very
Mhm.
resistant to change. And something that I've been seeing a lot of is, I mean, there's a saying, right? Marketers ruin everything. SEOs have officially ruined Google just because we've just flooded it with I'd say we just kind of like fart out content, pardon my French. We just kind of fart out content, right? Just for the sake of it, right? And especially in like B2B SaaS spaces where, it's thought leadership content, but there's low barriers to entry because almost anyone can write an article now. And I don't mean any disrespect to writers, but now there's software that is doing it for us, and it's only going to get better and better and better, right? But video presents a challenge because not everyone likes to get on camera. Not everyone can come up with the topics. Not everyone has the cadence. Not everyone has the editing chops or the ability to put together all that. There's a lot higher barriers to entry. And that's why that's what I'm saying. I'm trying to build a moat around myself and my businesses by getting on TikTok, because I know that larger brands, the amount of red tape that they have to go through just to do that type of stuff, it's difficult, right? And a lot of the consulting that I do, I'm actually working more and more with companies, and focused a lot more on kind of better content strategies that has nothing to do with blog or written content creation, right? Some written content creation for like LinkedIn, platforms like that, if you're in the B2B space, but really focusing on video. And in the terms of my consulting contract, it literally says, if you don't hire a full-time creator, then this contract is officially voided. I just won't work with anyone that doesn't have somebody that's full-time in-house, dedicated 100% just to creating, managing video-based content that we can then push to other platforms as well. But it all hinges on video, because it's really the only kind of like, it's not even blue ocean space anymore. It's still brutally competitive, but if you're trying to build a brand off the back of like written and blog content, you're making it way harder for yourself than it needs to be.
Yeah, well, and I think if you can do that, but then you have to convert it into video content. So if you wanted to start there, like, hey, we'll round up our ideas, we'll get our points, and we'll get our copy. That'll be the hook in the video, and then we'll turn it into a script. I think it could still work, but yeah, I think the days of SEO just living by itself are kind of not numbered. You're still going to get lots of traffic, and you'll still get more organic results through Google, at least, until they start really pushing video content, which they're trying to do now just by transcribing video and then
For
ranking.
sure. I just posted a video on my YouTube channel that got way more traction than anything I've posted. And it's this concept of, I hate being like the SEO is dead guy. And I'm more motivated than anybody to sell SEO stuff because I have an SEO agency. And I also have the Blueprint training, which is focused on working with SEO agencies. And what I tell people is that, look, as long as people are using a platform, it's not dead. Like email, right? Like email marketing is not dead. It's just completely changed, and the attention has gone from 50% open rates back in the day to, if you're at 15% on a big list, you're in a pretty good place, right? It doesn't say that email is dead, but our strategies have to change. It's the same thing with SEO, especially if you're an SEO vendor, an agency. If you're still trying to sell SEO the same way that you've been selling it in the past, assuming that it's a good fit for every business, it's just not. Like, if I'm a B2B SaaS company, I'm putting $0 in SEO. It's a complete waste of resources, as opposed to putting it into other organic strategies like content and supporting that with paid. However, my wife does have, she does Airbnb short-term rental management as a company. That is a platform that in itself is still a great place for search, because there's very few other avenues to get clients, because you can't really dial in an ICP. So in a nutshell, if you can't dial in on a core ICP, then search is still good, because it's really hard to do content creation because you need an avatar. It's really hard to do outbound because you need a specific ICP to do outbound for. And search is kind of a catch-all for people that are putting themselves in market saying, I need a property manager right now in this location, right? So we're doing some paid search and some SEO stuff for them, and it works really well. But of course, there's a ceiling on that, and you have to figure out other channels. Otherwise, you only scale to a certain point. So when I coach and work with agencies, I tell them all the time, I like hook them in by telling them that, like, yo, like, if you're continuing to run and sell your SEO agency the way that you've been doing it for the past 5-10 years, you have a very limited runway left. You got maybe 1 or 2 years left on that, until the market starts to get smarter and being like, hey, I'm getting traffic, but I'm not getting any customers, right? Like, the core of what we do here as marketers is to make people money, right? Or some form or facet that leads to getting more customers and making more money. And if you're not able to prove that, or at least be a attributable source to that, which is what's happening with SEO, is like, you can still get a ton of traffic, but if you want to rank for top funnel searches that have nothing to do with the brand, or are purely informational, or people can get that from a knowledge graph in Google, you're making it very hard for yourself to continue to build your business. And that's why the Blueprint training does so well, because we're focused on refocusing the offer on industries, on niches, on verticals, on ICPs, where SEO still makes them money, right? My agency, for example, focuses on attorneys, because I've been through the gambit with attorneys trying to help them do podcasts and video marketing. They're just too busy, right? And these guys and gals, I should say, are all taking sales calls themselves. They can't really hire a salesperson because they have to have that kind of legal consultation with them. So they're so busy. And their big thing is that, I don't want a lot of traffic. I don't want a lot of leads. I just want the right leads. Because if I get 2 or 3 cases, I'm good for the next couple of years, right? So understanding, again, who that ICP is, what they want, and then backing that into the proper marketing mix and marketing strategy is really kind of the core foundation of what a lot of my thesis is when working with agencies now, which is, you have to be focused on a single type of customer, especially if you're an agency doing less than 1 to 3 million per year. You got to focus in on one vertical, on one niche, on one ICP, if you will, and then focus completely on what it is that is going to make them the money the fastest. And then that is what your service and offer should be. And if search is a part of that, great. But we can't be romantic about just forcing search on people anymore, because, again, you're just setting yourself up for these conversations where the client is upset, the client isn't happy, the client is bothering you, which is dragging down your team. It just becomes a nightmare of a business to run. That's why so many agencies get stuck in this business where they're like, I'm working nonstop and I feel like I can't get ahead. And it's like, yeah, because you're not selling the right thing. You're not putting yourself in the right position to succeed.
No, well, I think when you said, SEO for SEO's sake, is kind of what everybody is doing for the most part, or even content. Because I think with content, everybody's told, like, hey, do content, make videos, do this. And there's a disconnect between, the action of making stuff and how the heck it's going to lead to a sale. And what'll happen is they'll get clients, and maybe the client will be impressed, like, oh, you made all this content, like, I feel great about the process. But then when you try to justify all the work and the money that was spent, there's just nothing there, because there was a disconnect between the action and the results. But it sounds like you have that figured out. You called it the Blueprint.
Yeah, the Blueprint training, we focus on working primarily with SEO agencies. Our actually core kind of ICP is all about, I'm sorry, not ICP, our core kind of thesis is all about service productization, especially in the SEO space, because, SEO agencies just they try and do everything for everyone, all this custom work, and it doesn't make customers more money. Like, nobody really needs a competitive analysis. I'm sorry. It doesn't really move the needle on anything, right? It's good if the client asks for it, if they want it, or if they're trying to solve a specific problem around it, but like putting that into your core deliverables and like sending them stuff that they don't want, it's not the right move. So the thing with productization, though, is that you cannot productize your service if you're not focused on one vertical, right? The whole thesis with productization is that you're doing the same thing over and over again for the same type of client, and you're focused on solving a specific problem for a specific avatar, right? And when you can do that too, then you can create leverage in terms of pricing, right? Being able to, when you're solving a problem, again, especially it's a painful problem, and that problem is tied to lack of customers, to lack of whatever, you can then anchor your cost, your pricing against the expected result or against your past results, right? And that's another reason why SEO agencies get stuck, is because they're not making companies more money. So they're charging based on hours and based on output. And so they're constantly throwing more stuff on to be like, oh, let me do more and more stuff to justify these hours, when it's like, me now as a business owner who works with vendors, I get it. I'm like, I don't really want to talk to you. I don't really want to have a weekly call with you to talk about my keyword rankings. Like, just show me the data that I need to know to show me that what I'm paying you is justified, right? And again, if SEO is, so many SEOs are just so romantic about the channel. I mean, we've been doing it for so long, and it's such a big and deep, like, you don't really realize how big the SEO industry is until you're selling to this industry for, 5 years now at the Blueprint training, and you realize it's a big industry, and people are very passionate about it. And it's great because it creates a lot of conversation, which makes marketing in the space very great. As I'm sure, as you all know, a digital marketer, agencies are very passionate and they're very vocal, and they love discourse, which is great, for marketing. But they're also very stubborn and resistant to change, because there's a lot of fear rooted in changing your business, and especially your core model. And kind of pivoting off of SEO, people are SEOs by nature instead of problem solvers by nature, consultants by nature, and focused on what's best for the client, not what's best for you and what you want to do. It's not about us, it's about them. Like, how can I help them? How can I help them sleep better at night? How can I help them get more customers? How can I do all these things? That's what we should be focused on our services about. And again, that's how you build into this leverage with pricing, to be constantly going up market and charging more without having to do more, like literally by doing less. You can charge more by doing less. It's not like just a hook and an ad that I run. It's not overly difficult, but it comes down to understanding that ICP and what they really care about, right? Like with attorneys, like I said, we could throw a bunch of stuff at them, but if I don't really know who they are and what they want, then I'm just wasting time, and I'm also literally kind of drive my business into the ground. But by stripping things down and productizing your service, you're able to focus on the core process that drives results. It also creates a standard, right, for the top tier of what you could and should be doing every single time. Because when you're doing custom work, which I don't have a problem with per se, if the client's paying you the right amount of money for it, but if you're every client that comes in, you have to reinvent the wheel and figure something out. It's a nightmare of a business to run. It is not an agency is not a fun business to run if you're doing that. But when you've got a process, when you've got systems, when it's scalable, predictable, repeatable, you can really remove yourself from that. And you can finally get to that position where you're focused on running the entire business and seeing the whole field, right? As opposed to just hyper focused on tactics and keyword rankings and links and all that different stuff that you just get bogged down in. And when you finally pull yourself out, you realize those things don't matter because the client doesn't care about them. Right. So,
well, it's not going to get you more business. And even if you could get new business, if it's so custom, you don't really have a business. You have a consultancy. Exactly. You have like, okay, here, let's look at your individual business and then we'll go through this, but you can't clone yourself. And so you can't scale that at all. On top of the fact that you will just be working harder and harder and harder. And unless it's just you and you enjoy that process.
Yeah, that's the other side of the coin, right?
Yeah.
If that's who you are, if you don't want to be a people manager, you can still build a highly successful consultancy by doing custom work, but you got to be really, really good and really knowledgeable, right? And that's kind of the beautiful thing about productization, is that you can just focus on one thing and you don't have to, when I do consulting, brain consulting, it is a pretty big scope and a pretty big task. And I do have to be pretty well involved in it because I'm the one, again, who's been doing this for 15 years and has pretty much seen everything that there is when it comes to especially B2B marketing. But you're right, it doesn't scale. But what I do is I just keep raising my prices, keep raising my prices until people just get priced out, or it's no longer worth it for me to work with them. But I agree, I do that to put cash in my pocket so I can go invest in real estate. I don't do that as my primary core business because it's not something you burn out on it pretty quickly.
Well, it's like the icing, and I'm sure you find people where you're like, that's neat, I want to be part of that. And then you could inject yourself into the process, but you're still running the process. It's still easier than you coming up with a bunch of custom crap that's going to take a bunch of time to develop. You talked a lot about niching. So niching, people who listen to Digital Marketer, we constantly talk about that because it's the only way to scale. How do you recommend, or how do you help agencies find their niche?
Yeah, we've got a really good, we call it positioning, right? Because it's just market positioning is what it comes down to, right? So within that, there's a bunch of different ways that you can quote unquote niche. Like niche is one of the facets, in my opinion, or pillars of positioning, right? Because there's also like vertical specific, there's ICP specific, right? Like attorneys, right? Or like, and then when it starts to get really lethal too, is when you niche down, you niche into a niche, right? So I have a friend, his name's Chris Dry. I think he's actually been on the show. He only does PI attorneys, and they're going to do 20 million revenue this year after a couple of years. They crush it. And only PI attorneys and only SEO too. He just added on paid search, mind you. And he refuses leads from any other attorney vertical because he knows also that PI is obviously the most money, and he's just got that vertical and niche just completely dialed in. So within the blueprint, this is actually a big part, like a big core part of one of our pillars that we coach on, which is really drilling into what's a good fit to be your position, right? Because a lot of people, they go into Facebook groups and they see like, oh, the riches and the niches, and they just pick something off, pick something out of the hat, like, oh, I work with contractors, but they have no experience with contractors. They don't know the industry. They don't know how they talk. They don't know what they care about. So we have this positioning workbook that we put people through that drills into what do you have experience with? What do you enjoy doing? What do you have connections in, right? And then we've also got a kind of, they pick a couple of them, and then we have a very simple analysis framework to just kind of validate if that positioning is good. Like, is there purchasing power? Can you drill into a single ICP? Because again, with marketing and acquisition, if you can't talk to one type of avatar, if you will, marketing gets very difficult, right? And especially with how we coach and teach it in the blueprint for beginner agencies, outbound is a big part of that, right? And that is all about understanding who's on the other end, building a list of 10 of those people that without a shadow of a doubt in your mind that you can help and you can make more money if you're given the right opportunity. That's how we approach that type of thing, right? So there's other parts to kind of validating the market too, purchasing power. And if you're doing one of the things that we layer on that too is just kind of putting yourself in the shoes of the customer. How, like, for example, if I get into a car accident, how do I find an attorney, right? Well, I could ask for referrals. I go to Google, I look on sites like Avo. So all these things kind of figure into the next part about it, which is offer design, right? So you select your positioning, you validate it, you go through this little process with us, and then we help you to put together an offer, which is how do we build a promise to these people that drills into what they actually care about. And this is another thing that agencies struggle with is they think that SEO or Facebook ads is an offer. It's not, it's a service. Like, people don't want Facebook ads. They want the result of what you're doing with that, right? So we go through this whole offer design process to help them understand what is it that this business needs and wants, what are their fears, what are their anxieties, what keeps them up at night, and how do we craft something that maps directly to that. And then we go into like service design off the back of that too. So for example, for us with attorneys, we do a blended search approach. We don't just do SEO because they care about speed too, right? So we do that kind of map for us to do a whole search engine takeover approach with all 4 ad types, local ads, paid search ads, all the ad types, and then all the organic types as well. So that's kind of like our core service. And then we productize that after that. And then once you get through that process, to that systems, processes, documentation, just a lot of legwork. The final part that we're now adding on, which is a little bit more advanced, is this concept of designing a thesis for your agency, right? What is your unique, I don't want to call it a unique selling proposition, but it's kind of similar, right? But this is really what you base all your marketing off of, right? So again, for example, at the Blueprint training, our core thesis is that running your agency the way that you're running it, it's a tremendous waste of your bandwidth, right? You should be productized. So this whole concept and this whole thesis of productization, which then lends to all these different topics that we can talk about through marketing, right? And really drilling into pain points. And then at our agency, Webris, our SEO agency or attorney focused marketing agency, our core thesis there is that if you like, SEO and search engine marketing is still the best way for you to get customers, right? Because you're too busy to do social media marketing. You're too, Facebook ads is just not a good way to, like, people aren't on Facebook to find an attorney, right? It's a point of interest, a point of search. So that's kind of built into our core thesis. And then off the back of that, it then taps into the vein of, well, all these other agencies are pitching it to you wrong because they're pitching you a single service. When in fact, if you're just doing SEO, you're only showing up for like 20% of the SERPs because there's local listings, there's ads, there's people also ask. So we have this thesis of you have to take over the whole search engine, right? To really have the opportunity to then tie into what they care about, which is you don't care about leads, you don't care about traffic, you don't care about rankings. You care about getting the right phone calls. So it's kind of like an alligator waiting for his food. You kind of got to just be waiting there with your mouth open, right? And you can't do that because you could be missing these opportunities for people that are going, you're missing that case because your competitor who's bidding on those local search ads. You're missing that case because that other attorney has more reviews than you in the local search pack, right? So we kind of package this all into a thesis, which then ties into a pitch that they can't really say no to aside from pricing, right? Aside from cost. But then again, we've got this I actually built a tool. We give it away in the blueprint training. We call it the traffic projection tool, the lead projection tool, where we're actually able to show them based on search data, based on paid search data, how much money that they could be making if they're paying with us, right? So we charge anywhere between $10,000 and $30,000 a month for these attorneys. It's a lot of money. It's a big investment. You can't just go out and pitch that if you're not able to then show that against, tie that to expected results, right? So it's a key part of what we do too, which is putting together analysis that shows them, hey, if you're going to spend this, you can expect to make XYZ over this time period. So that's we've kind of thought through this whole process of from all the way at the beginning, from positioning to all the way at the end to closing these clients. And it's consistent, it's congruent. It's another big thing that I work with agencies with is this concept of thesis and messaging and consistency and congruency. Sometimes you just see a brand or a consultant or an agency and you see it and you're like, damn, that's pretty. Just everything that they have is just smooth. It's just their messaging, their offer, their website, everything just clicks. That's what we try and give people. That's a feeling that we want to give the clients that we work with at the Blueprint, is that feeling of almost like a breath of relief that like everything's in place now, like everything you need is here. It doesn't, and this is why I take a step back and say too, like, it doesn't really matter about the service that you're doing, right? It matters about getting results for that other person and then just figuring out what you need to do, because there's no new services out there. There's no new platforms. Maybe TikTok is an emerging one, but for the most part, unless you're in the e-com space, you don't have to learn to master that. You can learn everything pretty easily. Like, don't come to the Blueprint training if you want to learn how to do SEO, because you can learn that on YouTube for free. Right. But what we're going to teach you how to do is how to run your business that's sustainable, that is repeatable for the future, to give you that staying power in the market, right? Not how to just rip cash off the top, but how to build an agency for the next 10 years and how to adapt with when AI comes. It's coming and it's going to devastate a lot of companies, right? But if your business isn't tied up in just a service that you do for people, it's more tied up in solving a problem that you can then adapt and change very quickly and very easily. When again, you can't do that until you zoom out and see the whole playing field. So you started with niching, but I kind of went into our whole process there.
Yeah. Let me see. You said a lot there. Just to wrap up the niching, could you just give a couple examples of how you took a company from maybe they're like, I'm a full stack and I serve 1,000 industries and I make $50,000 a year. How do you help that? Or just a couple examples of taking somebody from that process to the
for sure. The first thing is almost working on kind of the mental part of it, to remove the fact that niching or positioning, you have to take a giant step back to move forward, right? And that's where so many businesses get stuck and they get scared because they're like, I don't know, I get these leads in from all over the place and it keeps the lights on. So like, I'm really hesitant to turn that off. So the first thing that we have to do is just berate them with people that have been through before, from past case studies from agencies out there in the market that they're looking at. Even looking at other programs like Digital Marketer, right? We didn't invent this. This is good business practices, right? So really drilling that into their head that this is the right way forward. It really is. And you got to take one step back to take two steps forward sometimes, right? So an example of one that comes to mind recently was Cliff. I'll say Cliff. He's out in California. He was working with all sorts of different type of clients. We call it like a jack of all trades, a master of none, right? He would sign a client and then he would scale horizontally, meaning he would get in there and be like, oh, you need email? I can do that. You need web design? Oh, I can do that. I can figure it out. And what's happening is that, yes, you're tacking on revenue, but it's not sustainable, right? Because what you have to do is go out and find new people, build new systems, new processes, or you do it yourself and you do a shitty job, right? So what we drilled into him was, give us your top 3 case studies over the last 3 years, right? And let's analyze those. Let's see what those look like. So they were all in the e-commerce space, right? So we started moving towards the e-commerce space with them. The challenge with that though is it's brutally competitive, and to really cut your teeth in the e-commerce space, you got to be a good technical marketer, right? We're talking about where the real money is in e-commerce. We're talking about sites on like Magento, Demandware, like really, really, really big, difficult platforms to work with, right? So he didn't have a little bit of imposter syndrome, but he also didn't have the experience there. You kind of want to get there by moving up market over time, building your team to ultimately work with those clients, but he wasn't there yet, right? So the position that we worked on was, okay, let's focus on a segment of the market that we know is going to be a little bit lower in revenue cap. So we could either go out and make a positioning statement like, hey, we work with e-commerce shops doing less than $1 million, or we could find the platform that maps to that, right? Shopify, great example. Or even what's the one on WordPress? I don't do much e-commerce. Whatever the one on WooCommerce, right?
WooCommerce.
Inherently, if you're running on WooCommerce, especially, you're definitely doing less than $1 million in revenue because it's a platform that doesn't scale. So we focused him on working then on platform specific and then also then niche specific underneath that, right? So again, when you're first beginning to is what I talk about it like concentric circles, right? Like a niche, it could be huge. There's niches within niches, right? So when you look at things like a Venn diagram and you start to overlap them, that's how you start to kind of build a market of one, right? How many agencies out there are only working with beauty products that only work on WooCommerce or only work on Shopify, or they specialize in working with those? So that's a pretty good example of one that we went through recently, just a couple months ago. And again, you have to take a ginormous step back in order to do that. But you also don't have to like tear down what you're doing, because a lot of you kind of have to test this a little bit, and your position is also going to adapt over time because you start working with Shopify. And yeah, you can build a good couple $1 million agency off of that, but eventually you always want to go up market, always, right? So you want to leave space in your positioning where you can change, you can adapt, and you can, change your communication strategy. So like, we didn't tell him to rip down his whole website and do all that. We basically told him to set up a subdomain, right? Change the messaging, change the copy there. So that way it didn't interrupt what he's doing with his current leads that were coming in. And he could focus now on specific messaging, specific targeting, going to the subdomain, which was literally just a carbon copy of his website, but literally just changing. We help Shopify stores in the beauty space, scale past X amount in revenue, something like that, whatever it was. And then, then we're able to then focus on that segment of the market, which is much different than working with a demandware site that has 1 million URLs, because they inherently care about different things. Their problems are inherently different than a solopreneur's Shopify store, but they both still need customers, right? So then it goes into designing an offer that is specific to that subset of Shopify stores in the beauty space, right? And that included things like TikTok, because when you take a step back and look at it, you're like, if I really want to get this client results in the e-commerce space right now in 2022 and 2023, you can't just do SEO or paid search or even Facebook ads. Like, you kind of got to be on TikTok. Like that's really where a lot of discovery is happening now. And it's also the fastest way to get results. Like, speed is another key part here, right? Is that if you're running a service like SEO that takes 6 to 12 months, like, that's not sexy. Like, you're not going to close a lot of deals. It's like 12 months, you'll get results. It's like, I don't know about that. So inherently, and then you get into the whole conversation too, which we can talk about, versus done for you, done with you, of like, which holds a lot of people back too, because like, I don't know how to do TikTok. I can't do that for people. It's like, you don't have to, but what you can do is you can coach them through, you can consult them through that process by setting up, and you can still productize that too by simply using communication tools like decks and just meetings and, putting them on like an 8-week program to run them through week by week. Okay, week 1, we're focused on content topics. Week 2, we're focused on actually filming it. Week 3, we'll focus on editing it, et cetera, right? So you can still impact the client without doing a fully done for you service as well, which is another thing that holds up a lot of agencies from changing their positioning and changing their offer, because they feel like they have to do or learn something completely new, which sometimes you do, but it doesn't have to be all the way there, right? Which I think is important.
No, those are fantastic points. I did a terrible job introducing you, so I'm actually going to turn it over to Bonnie really quick. I have to run to the Scalable event because I have a bunch of people I said I was going to meet. But Bonnie, if you want to take over and then turn it over to questions, I'm sure a bunch of people have tons of questions. One more question for me, just because I know a lot of agencies ask this, is as you're transitioning to say a niche or really focusing on one target market, what do you tell your existing clients? Because that's always a concern of like, if you start branding something new, like, okay, now I'm going to focus on healthcare or whatever it is. Your existing clients will say like, hey, what's happening? Are you still helping me? And then what do you do with those clients?
Yeah, I think twofold. I think one, I don't think you be proactive about it, because I think most 90% of your customers are not going to know, right? You could like take them off of your email list if you wanted to, or stuff like that, so they don't see it. And if they do see it, you just have an honest conversation with them. You say, look, I'm trying to build a business and this is the best way forward for us, but it's not going to impact your service. It's not going to impact what we do for you. We want to still work with you and continue to retain you. However, going forward, this is what our focus is, because we've identified that this is the best way to grow our business. And I think any sensible business owner or even staff member will totally understand that. And it shouldn't matter to them as long as they're still getting what they want from the working relationship. You know?
I love that. Just
Yeah.
direct, honest, and I could tell you work with lawyers because that was excellent answer. Well, that was great talking to you, Ryan. I hate to run, but I'm sure Mickey has 1,000 questions if nobody else does. So I'll turn it over to the audience. It was very nice talking to you, and
yeah, you too, Mark.
I will connect later.
Take care.
All right. Do we have any questions for Ryan? And while you guys are thinking of your questions, just a little bit about Ryan. Ryan is the founder, CEO, and managing partner at Webris and a managing partner at the Blueprint Training. Ryan also happens to be an expert in corporate SEO, scaling an agency, and creating tools and training. His superpower is using SEO services to scale. All right. Looks like Mickey has a question for you here.
Yeah, I see it popped up. You want to just go ahead and tackle it?
Perfect.
Sure. So for the note too, I haven't done SEO in a while. You know, my business has happened to run an SEO, but my marketing superpowers are much more focused on content. We do a lot of paid traffic too, a lot of paid traffic. So I'm sure a lot of you are going to start seeing my face around Facebook and Instagram and TikTok. I apologize for that. So the question is, can you speak a little to your framework for growing businesses? They have a niche, they have a productized service. What's next? Content marketing. And a big part of that too, you know, so when I work with agencies, honestly, I promise you this, it sounds sometimes like jargon, and some people always want like the secret sauce. There is none. There really isn't, right? The secret sauce is solving problems for people, and problems that they're inherently willing to pay a lot of money for because it's a pain in their ass, right? When it's painful enough, people will pay for it. And especially if you can prove that it's tied to a certain growth in revenue, right? And if you can do that too, we call it anchoring in the sales process. If you can anchor what it is that you're pitching against an expected result, it's really hard for people to say no, right? It's one of those kind of like no-brainer offers, as we call it. So it really is not an exaggeration that 99% of what I focus on with agencies is positioning, it's offer design, and it's productization. Because once you do that, right, the other part of the coin here is an acquisition. That's kind of like the last part. That's what 99% of people come to us for. They're like, we have problems getting customers. I'm like, yeah, because A, nobody knows what you do, because you never talk about it on your social media channels. You think that people are just going to show up out of the blue and want to work with you. And B, you're not clearly, like, how can you market something that you can't really put a finger on what it is? So like, and the other part of that too is that when you start working with a single type of business, like attorneys, our biggest source of clients at Webris is attorney referrals, right? Because we do a good job for them. And all we have to do then is say, hey, look, we're trying to grow our business. We're young folks over here trying to feed our young families. And you've gotten good results from us, and you're an attorney. And if you refer us 3 other attorneys that you think are in a good position to work with us, then we'll give you the next month free. Right. So we're working off referrals a lot there too. And it's much easier when you're only doing one thing, because it's one less thing to worry about when you have a productized service, because you're only doing the same thing over and over again. So staffing is easier, training is easier, getting results is easier. And the biggest thing here too about acquisition, people want to work with you if they know you can get them results. If you cannot prove that, if you cannot show that, then it's going to be very hard for you. So marketing is really difficult to do until you get to that point. So to answer the question now is that once you do get to this point, it's just marketing, and it's just communication, and it's going out there and becoming that guy or that girl or that person that is known for what you do, right? Like we all know that person on Facebook or LinkedIn that you look at and they're like, that's the SaaS person. Like that's the TikTok person. That's what you need to do. And that's the other thing that people don't do, is they're not willing to dive all into it, whether it's like a case of imposter syndrome, whether it's a case of caring too much what other people think, whether it's a case of whatever. Like, I don't mean to go all Gary Vee on people, but you got to get over it, right? If you want to build a business, like you have to not give a shit, and you just have to do it, because you get to a point in your life where you're like, what's more important to me? Somebody from high school who I haven't talked to in 15 years, or me feeding my family, and like, you just have to know and understand that you're walking on the right path and you're doing the right thing. And you are here to help other businesses. You're not selling garbage. Like, you are here to solve problems that is proven, because people are paying you to do it already. So you have to become that person. And that's step one. And like, I tell you, when I don't take sales calls anymore, but when our sales team at the Blueprint, I tell them all the time, like, the first thing you need to do when you get a lead is look at their social media profiles. Because if they tell you they struggle with acquisition and they haven't posted on their LinkedIn, their Facebook, their Twitter, their Instagram, their YouTube, then that's where you start. Like, start talking about what you do. That's it. And that's where you start with it. And from there, you build a little momentum. You start getting results for people, you start asking for referrals, and then you can start doing more aggressive marketing outbound, right? Hey, I've now helped 5 attorneys to achieve their goals. Why don't I go out and build a list of 100 attorneys that are in the same space that I can pre-qualify because I know how many employees they have, I know how many locations that they have. We can remove the whole conversation of I can't pay for it, I can't afford it. If you're an attorney with 3 locations, you're making bread. You can pay for it, all right? It's just a matter of me getting in touch with you the right way. So the next one is outbound for us. We're always pushing outbound on people, and not mass outbound, not this whole like building, burning down domains. It is a one-to-one connection with people that you know without a shadow of a doubt in your mind. If you talk to those people, you have the confidence that you can pitch them and you can get them to work with you. That's 2. And then 3 is paid traffic, right? That's kind of at the end of it. Once you get past $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, you can afford to spend $6,000 to $10,000 on marketing and paid traffic. Shooting fish in a barrel once you get there. But this is like a process. It really is. Like, you can't, a lot of times people fail because like, yeah, I've tried Facebook or Instagram. That's like, yeah, but you can't run Facebook and Instagram ads if you're just like, we do SEO, we do growth marketing. Like, nobody cares, right? But if you are running ads specifically saying, hey, attention attorneys, right? And you're specifically talking to attorneys or contractors, that's where you can really start to do marketing. So that is why this is a whole ecosystem. And that's why, like I said, I don't even talk about acquisition with agencies until they've proven that they've gotten to this point where they're willing to drill in on a single avatar, and they've proven that market, and they've built an offer specifically for them, and they've mastered it, right? And they can speak to it, they can do it, they can recite it in their sleep, and they can then productize that and turn it into a system. And then we can start to talk about acquisition. So I think that answered that one. The next one is, do you primarily use testimonials, case studies to anchor the value? Yes and no. I think you'd be surprised how little people care about themselves, right? They just do. Businesses care about themselves. They care about what you can do for them, not what you can do for other people. So case studies to me are important all the way down to the bottom of the funnel when they're looking at a proposal. We've tested them 1 million times with ads. They don't work because people don't care about other people. They care about themselves. Your ads should be speaking, your marketing should be speaking to the person on the other side of it and what problems that they have. And another part of that too is that this whole concept of service productization, especially with SEO. So we don't do long-term contracts. And we tested it at the beginning being like, hey, people are probably going to care about this because they don't have to pay for it. They don't. They don't care about that. They care about themselves and they care about the problems that they're having. They care about it when they have a proposal in front of them and they're looking at 3 other proposals and they're like, oh, this agency's pitching us a sprint program and the other agency are pitching us a 12-month contract. I'll go with the sprint program because it seems like it's going to be less money and less commitment, right? That's when case studies and testimonials matter too. When you have their full attention, when they're analyzing the cost, the benefit, and the value of your service, 100% matters. But putting it at the top of the funnel, it doesn't matter as much as you think it would. It really doesn't. It's a huge common misconception in the agency space that like case studies and testimonials are their number one marketing plan. There's an agency called Refine Labs, run by a really smart guy named Chris Walker. Good person to bring on here too, digital marketer, by the way. He runs the company, grown to 20 million in 3 years. If you go to their website, refinelabs.com, you will see 3 pages and they've gotten to $20 million and it has their pricing on it. And their pricing starts at $20,000 a month, right? They have no case studies. They have no testimonials. They have no logos. They have no blog content, none of that, right? It's a 3-page website. And that goes to show you where a lot of decisions are being made. They're being made off platforms. They're being made in social media. They're being made through conversations with other people, right? Things that you can't necessarily track and impact so much. So way too much emphasis gets put on, again, a lot of this just takes a step back. And this is what I always tell folks too, is that when you're a customer, what do you care about? Right? Like when you especially with SEOs, like when you use Google, what do you use it for? Are you going to Google and typing in buy blue jeans? Like you're not. You're going to Google and typing in buy Gap size 32 shortcut black blue jeans, right? Like because you found it on TikTok, you saw an influencer doing it, or you saw your friend wearing it and they told you about it, right? So much of this and so much of marketing, I don't want to call it common sense, but like we just overthink things, right? Like how do you find people? How do you want to hire an agency, right? What do you care about? What's going to convince you? So not saying that testimonials and case studies don't matter. We still put a lot of value on them because I do think it's important to document and tell the stories of other people, but it's not going to solve your acquisition problems by any means. Daniel asked, when dealing with larger companies as clients, what are your thoughts on offering a free month of service for X amount of referrals being perceived as lowering the value of your brand? So I think that's a fair question. I think part of that comes down to, like, I wouldn't do that as a front end marketing plan. Like I wouldn't run an ad or like an email saying like, hey, send us a referral and get X amount off. I think you have to know who's on the other end. I think you have to know if it's even worth you to make that offer to them, because a lot of people might be like, I don't know, dude, I'm just a marketing manager trying to get my salary here. I don't know anyone. I'm just punching the clock. It works very well with attorneys because attorneys are very well networked. And we also make promises to them about location exclusivity, right? It's not going to impact the work that we're doing with you. And we've also gotten them to a point where they really trust us, right? We're talking to them twice a month. We've gotten results for them. They really like us. And it gets to the point where, with clients at the end of the day, you should try and build a relationship with them where they like you and they almost feel bad about firing you, as weird as that sounds. Get people to like you. I don't have any tips on how to do that. A lot of that is just being present, showing good results for people, and actually caring and listening to them. But if you can do that, then they will want to help you, right? And a lot of times you won't have to offer the discount. You can make that a secondary. If they're like, you can see the reaction. If you're like, hey, look at Daniel, really trying to grow a business. You see how hard we work. I'm working nonstop all day, every day, really trying to get myself to the next level and build this company to what I know it could be. Do you have anyone you think that might be interested in working with us? Right? You can just send me their email or if you can connect us, that would be great. And if like, I don't know, you can be like, look, if I can make it worth your while, I'll give you a month free. If you can refer 3 people over that you think would be a good fit to work with us right now. So you can kind of use that in your back pocket, right? This is not a strategy that we push a lot. We actually don't have our sales team do this. We have our service delivery team do it because they're the ones talking to them every single, conversation, doing the work with them. So when you bring a salesperson on a call, it tends to change the energy a little bit. So we find that our service team that they built a relationship with, and we actually incentivize them by giving them a 10% cut on anything that closes through them as well. So it's a pretty nice system. And also we work on sprints. We don't work on long-term contracts. So it becomes extra important because we do project-based work that's usually 2 to 3 months. So they're actually responsible for reselling. And it's just a different energy when like our salesperson shows up with a deck and they're like, oh God, here we go. But when it's the person I work with every day, it's much different. Mickey asks, what are key things you focus on when building a content marketing plan? It's actually this is a good question. Because I don't listen to Gary Vee as much as I used to in the past because it tends to be repetitive, but yesterday was doing some landscaping outside and put his podcast on, and he tends to give the same type of advice over and over again, right? Create content, create more of it, period. That's like a lot of his advice. And he's not wrong in that. And he's a very, very, very smart person because he knows how to hedge his bet, right? He knows that if you do create 10 pieces of content a day, you're probably going to have success. It's the way that it is. So his advice is always kind of right. But something that he said that was very interesting was if you listen to his 4D sessions, when he gets asked questions like this and he doesn't have time to prepare stuff, he made a comment where he's like, actually, I've never really said this before, but he's like, something that I definitely take for granted and a mistake that I make when recommending is that I take for granted how good I am at ideating content topics and just knowing what's going to work on TikTok, knowing what's going to work on Instagram, where a lot of people are like, Gary, I've been creating 10 pieces of content a day and I have no traction. And it's like, yeah, because you're creating the wrong content. You don't understand the nuances of the platform, right? You're trying to push long form video or like really boring calls like this on TikTok. Like if you try and clip this and put it on TikTok, it's going to go nowhere, right? You have to create content specifically for that platform. Context is everything. So, part of that is a long way of saying is that I actually push a lot of this on the client, right? Because so for me, when I ideate content, I use Notion. I'm literally sitting here just working and I'm like, oh, that's a really good idea for a piece of content. I'm going to write this down and I just put bullet notes. I film a video and then I have an editing team and I have a writer who will just kind of push it, kind of cut it up and push it contextually to platforms. But when I'm with clients, again, this is a key part of it is I make sure that they have somebody on the other end because I can't come up with content topics for another company. You have to have, again, this concept of having a thesis for your company. This is another huge thing that I'm going to start talking about more about is why so many agencies stagnate is because they're just like, what value do you provide the market? They're like, well, we do SEO. I'm like, I could go to my LinkedIn DMs, dude. I got 1 million people that are pitching SEO and link building right now. What is your argument? What is your messaging? Like, what is it that you're trying to impact on your clients, right? Like what argument are you making? So you as a brand have to be able to come up with these big ideas, right? In terms of trends, in terms of shifts, in terms of, you have to create something that's conversational in nature, right? When somebody sees it, they stop and they're like, I'm going to comment on that, whether it's good or bad, right? And sometimes bad is better because creating a bit of controversy in your marketing is kind of what you have to do in order to stand out. So so much of that I push onto other clients. So I train them on, essentially, it's kind of like an attorney, right? Like if you're an attorney going to trial, right, you have to put together an argument in a case, and you have to support it with facts and data, and you have to build an argument, build a story. It's literally just like that. So that is pushed onto the client. But for me, because I do it every single day, I just inherently know, and I'm so in touch with agencies and attorneys too, because I'm talking to them every day, right? Every single day I'm talking. We have a Slack channel with 1,000 agencies in there. And I personally go through and answer every single question myself. There's like 50 questions asked a week, and I'm going in there every single day. So I inherently just know these themes and these trends. And that's where I was able to put together this amazing framework in terms of positioning, offer design. And like, these are all core arguments that I'm able to make. And inherently, when people hear them, they're like, yeah, like that makes sense. Because I know, because I sit exactly where every agency sits. I've been doing this for such a long time. I inherently know. And I think every business has to be able to do that. And so the real conversation is, how do you tap into the client to make sure that they can give you the insights that they need to create effective content? Because if you are just creating content off of keywords, you're going to get some traffic. You might get some customers. You might move the needle a little bit, but like where things get really explosive and you really start to stand out is when you have a thought, you have an original argument, you have an original idea, and you're able to effectively communicate that. So the real question is, how do you impact that? And for me, I make sure that they have a content person to do that. And that's kind of the beautiful thing too about, let me just say this, that I do. So I have a third company. It's called Ryan Stewart Consulting. That's where I do like my brand consulting. That is where I make them have a content person. At our agency Webris, and this is why you have to be very mindful and thoughtful. Like the reason why I worked with attorneys wasn't because they have a lot of money and they're willing to spend on it. It's because I don't have to do that with them. I can still create blog content and paid search ads and make them more money. And that's key. And I can still, we actually hired an attorney who does all the writing for our clients. So we're able to get that subject matter expertise, but it's really just a matter of understanding the law, and there's no argument to be made there. Right. And then it's just basically competing against other firms and just getting more visibility. So, you know, it's really important when you do your, like when you think through the entire process in terms of your positioning, like, again, if you want to work with software companies, you've got to be able to impart some sort of unique argument with them, because otherwise they're not going to stand out, right? Like they're all creating really good long form content now. It's like a barrier to entry to work with a B2B software company, which a lot of people tend to shift that way because they know there's money there. But if you can't help them create a core argument, then it's going to be difficult. So again, that is a key decision maker for me when you're going through your positioning. You know, like somebody like contractors is still a great vertical to work with, because people go directly to Google, they search, I need a contractor, and they will call the first person there, and that person will be hired if they handle it properly. So it's really important that you think through these things in terms of how people want to discover with it, also a level of effort that it takes to do that communication as an agency. So another question is, why do you stick with short-term projects instead of longer term? So everyone here should definitely check out, or maybe I can send it to the digital marketing team. I have an amazing video that talks about kind of service productization, and a lot of the psychology behind it too, for why we moved to it. So again, putting yourself in the shoes of the client, like nobody gets excited about a 6 or 12-month contract. Nobody does. It's not fun to see that and the amount of money that you have to spend. So what we did is we removed all of like the fluff deliverables, like I said, that like just don't make any sort of impact on movement in terms of upward trajectory. And we packaged them into what we call sprints. So they're short-term sprints, but inherently what we do is we're able to put them on a retainer without calling it a retainer, because you still have to do content link building on an ongoing basis for SEO. We still have to do ad management and maintenance and copywriting on a basis, but we break it down into sprints. So we're able to present it to them in a 1 to 2 month period. It gives the impression that it's short-term project work, which is much less of a commitment, right? They're able to see or feel, which is important, feel results in a shorter period of time. And the price tag is a lot less. But when you add it up over a year period, you're actually paying a lot more. But again, it's much easier because I don't like retainers, because even with my consulting, it's a 90-day max. I won't do more than 90 days consulting, because I refuse to be in a position where I'm showing up in a call and I'm like, what the fuck am I going to talk about with these people this way? Like, I just won't do it. I won't put myself, and I especially won't put my team in that position. It's like, I used to work at a big agency, Sapien Nitro, way back in the day. And I used to hate it because I was like, yo, these people are leaving me out to dry. They're putting me to talk with a multi-billion-dollar client. I'm 23 years old. And like, I just learned how to use Excel and Google Analytics, and they're like having me sit and talk to like 10 people and like give project updates. I'm like, I I don't know, you know? So I learned my lesson that early on, that like my people are my most important asset, and I will never, ever, ever put them in a position to feel alienated, to feel like they're not supported, to feel like they have to basically be a superhuman in order to do their job. Right. So that's another big thing, was that it's better for the clients, also better for my team. And now we don't have to have we actually don't really have status calls with our specifically SEO clients, because it's an output based business. It's not an hours business, it's an output based business. So what we're pitching in terms of our sprints is our first sprint. We call it, this is just for SEO. It's called our foundational sprint. We do all the technical SEO work. We do all the keyword research. We do a whole strategy, boom, 15 days or less, because it doesn't take long. A lot of the SEO agencies will drag it out forever. It doesn't take long. We put together that strategy. And then from there, what's left with the type of clients that we want to work with, right? Attorneys, we do some home contracts, stuff like that. It's content and link building. That's really it. So what we do is we sell those in sprint packages of 10 each. So 10 pieces of content, 10 links. So what we're able to do is effectively build like almost like kind of 60 to 90 day sprint plans. And then we'll just resell content and links off the back of that over and over again through our delivery team. Right. So it's not that I prefer short-term contracts. I really don't. It's more of a psychology / just management thing that we have. So it does ultimately, it does the thing with this model too, is that you do have to be good at acquisition though, because if you're not able to consistently get leads, then you can kind of hurt yourself. But at the same time, again, we have a sprint resell rate of 80%. So every single sprint that we have, we're reselling at an 80% rate. So it actually works out almost better than long-term contracts, because I feel the need to get, even if I do a 12-month contract, which we rarely do, I'll always give them a 30 to 60 day out clause. Because again, I'm not putting anybody in a situation to talk to a pissed off client when they spend like 50 grand with us and they're not seeing what they want. It's not fun for anyone. So it works out in the end. And again, I have a really, really good video that breaks down like our pricing, all that stuff, and how we do it. It's on my YouTube channel. You just Google Ryan Stewart, it'll all be up there. Another question: how often do you meet with each client to discuss their marketing results of their marketing efforts? So at my consulting, it's every other week, sometimes weekly, depending on how much they're paying me. I like at my consulting, I charge a lot, like an absurd amount. And I keep on raising it every time, because it's not that I don't enjoy doing it. It's just, it's a energy drain for me. I'm actually an introvert, believe it or not. I can get on camera and talk, but like when I'm constantly working, like after this, I'm shutting it down. When I talk a lot and I have to work with people a lot, I have to give so much energy that it drains me. So, I don't like to do a lot of calls. I also tell them with consulting too, I do not do deliverables. You will not get a deck or a spreadsheet from me. I have a folder where I'll store all the work that we work on, but like there is a 0% chance of me putting together a professional document for you, because I think it's the biggest waste of time. I do everything in Notion. I take notes and I talk to you about it. We record it, and you just need to listen and pay attention, because it's ultimately up to your team to do it for my consulting stuff, right? We'll do some media buying and ads management. But for the most part, it's me working with their team. It's me helping them with their strategy. It's me looking at their data, helping them to essentially determine like a marketing mix. Why isn't this working? Believe it or not, I do a lot of positioning and offer design with these companies as well, especially a lot of offer design. Very few companies understand how to make offers properly. And it's usually a reason why a lot of these companies are stagnant with their marketing. So with that company, it's much more, because it's consulting. With the Blueprint training, we have kind of like a group coaching model. So I have 4 full-time coaches in the Blueprint. I do 1 call there per week. It's focused on like executive management for agencies. We have another one that's focused on like the core tactics of SEO. We have this guy, Kevin Indig, really, really smart technical SEO, who runs that for us once per week. So we have like multiple calls per week in the Blueprint training. And then at our agency, maybe once a month. And it's really just that we don't do it as like a status update. It's more of a delivery update. Thank you. That's my YouTube channel. We do it as a delivery update. Like, this is the content. Do you have any questions on it? Let me run you through it. These are the links. Do you have any questions on it? Let me run you through it. This is your strategy. Do you have any questions on it? Let me run you through it. But we don't have like a standing call with clients. I personally think for our model, we just don't really need it. It kind of sets the wrong precedent. And again, I know I don't like to have calls. So anytime that if I'm working on the contract in an agency, I like to be in touch with them, but it's overwhelming to have like a weekly standing call with someone, for them to just like an account person just like run you through status updates. It's like, this could have just sent me a fucking email, man, so I think it depends on what you're selling, how you're selling, and ultimately how you're delivering it. Right. If it's a consulting framework, you're going to have to do more communication, but that will also save you a lot of time in terms of doing deliverables and actually doing the work. So yeah. Any more
Looks like
questions?
we got 2 more questions, one from Bobby and one more from Mickey. Bobby is, how often do you meet with each client to discuss their marketing and the results of the marketing efforts?
So I think I kind of just answered that, right? Depending on for consulting, twice a month, maybe. I have one client that I meet weekly, but it's because they're a $500 million brand. And it's a cannabis company. They're actually my best friends own it too. That's why. So I have like a personal kind of responsibility to them, which is also why I don't work with friends and family, because I get stuck in the situation where like I feel like I have to do more. But they're just making so much money that and actually so everything that they paid me, they actually opened up a friends and family round just for me that I invested in the company. So I was able to put like a good chunk of money in the company. So that's kind of why I'm also helping them out more. I have another consulting client. It's actually a pretty large software company in the SEO space that I meet with once or twice a month, but I also have a media buyer that meets with them every week, every other week actually. And then at Webris, our SEO agency, it's really based on deliverables or based on sprint delivery. So at the end of every sprint, we have a client call.
And then we have one more from Mickey. For consulting in particular, Mickey is a solo consultant. Do you use the same growth framework as you would an agency?
Yeah, because I mainly like when you zoom out, I mean, yes and no. The positioning stuff is a lot harder to inflict on other businesses. Agencies are generally, the agencies that we tend to work with at the Blueprint 2 are usually in the $5K per month to $25K per month range, that are just kind of stuck and they don't know why. In a lot of, and I've been so hands-on working with agencies that I'm able to diagnose that very quickly and push that into a framework. There's another big part of the conversation too, which is team and people that I didn't really get into with agencies. That's another really big one, obviously. But again, like in my opinion, until you productize, and you can productize multiple services too. This isn't like a one thing. When you productize, it's much easier to hire and train. And it's much easier to lower, as bad as it sounds, reduce your costs on people because you don't have to go out and hire somebody who's like a 10-year veteran. You can bring in people with less experience and get them trained up. So a lot of it is I view marketing as very simple, right? Marketing to me is about understanding how to make offers and then communicate that properly. And that does go back to who are we talking to and how do they ultimately want to be talked to. But like way too much emphasis. Like I'm basically a platform agnostic person. It's all about what's best for them. So I always do start there. It's another good example. And I have this consulting client, they sell industrial lighting solutions to warehouses. So like Amazon warehouses, Walmarts, just massive buildings, like the most boring industry that it could possibly be. Right. And they have struggled. Their contracts are huge. They're each worth like $1 million each, right? They're way more than that. Sorry, minimum $1 million each. But they struggle they can't do marketing. It's a sales model because the only thing that they can do is knock on doors to generate leads. And that's basically been the last month of working with them is all about trying to drill into who, because we can't do anything. Like, how do I know, should I do LinkedIn or they've like tested LinkedIn, they tested Facebook, they tested all these different platforms and they don't work. And I'm like, yeah, that's because again, like nobody cares about lighting. We got to find out who's on the other end and we got to figure out what their problems are. And then we can build a communication plan around it. So it all does start with who, and then it goes into what, which is the offer. How do we then communicate to them what they want? And how do we drill into their pain points, their fears, their anxieties? That's another big part, is like understanding the messaging. So many companies start with we do this. We have a software company that does this. We offer services. They don't care. And that's why your marketing is not working. It has to be about you. When you start to see our ads, which hopefully you do on the Blueprint, you will see that it's speaking directly to you, the agency person or consultant, right? And it's hyper specific to the problems and pain points that you're having. I can't pull myself out of my agency. I'm working nonstop and I'm not making shit. My margins are terrible. I can't find and hire people. I can't acquire customers properly. All these things, and they tie back into our offers, right? Which we're able to clearly communicate with them. So it starts with the who, then the what, and then the how, which is now how do we ultimately get this messaging in front of people?
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Ryan. And thank you everyone for being here. We will be back for another agencies talk, same time next Friday.
Thanks, everyone. Great to meet you.
Thank you, Ryan.
Bye.
Bye, y'all.